Welcome to Building Loved Businesses, the show where we uncover the real stories behind businesses that are loved by their customers, their employees, and their communities, even if they're not that well known outside of them yet. I'm Nathan Schock, and today's guest is Ian Frink. He's co-owner of Crawford Company, headquartered in the Quad Cities. And what started as an HVAC company has really now diversified into a much bigger operation with in all kinds of areas. So I'm really excited for this conversation today. We're going to hear how they did it, lessons learned along the way, and how culture ended up being a big part of their success. So Ian, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. We really appreciate you guys thinking of us, and it's good to be here. Thanks, Nathan.
You bet. So for folks who are unfamiliar with the Crawford Company, just give me a picture of what it is today.
So Crawford Company was founded in 1952, and over the years we've diversified and gotten into different markets. And currently we're half of our business is in contracting, so that would be HVAC, plumbing, electrical work, residential, commercial, industrial. So that's half of our business. The other half is more manufacturing and production work. So we have a company called Seberg Industries. They live in the supply chain with Deere and Cat and some others doing parts fabrication, minoxidant, indoor air cleaning, vehicle exhaust, dust and fume removal, a lot of industrial settings for those guys. And then we have our fabrication division for Crawford, doing a lot of welding, cutting, forming with metals, and they're also fabricating tanks, so we have a shop for that. A lot of microbrewery work, brew houses, fermenters, things like that. So we have quite a few things going on. Headquartered in the Quad Cities. We have a location in Dubuque, Iowa, and then one in Muscatine, Iowa as well.
And take us back then, because that's a long way from an HVAC company, right? So how did you and your family first get involved in the business?
So Harvey Crawford founded our company in 1952, and he was a contractor in the Quad Cities, focused on sheet metal and heating and air conditioning, and that was the core business for quite a while. Harvey, unfortunately, in the early 70s, he got sick and passed away. My dad had assumed operations of the business at that point. Kind of made a career change early on for him, and took things over. So, Bob Frink, he took over running the business in the 70s, and then he brought on a partner, Jim Maynard, Sr. So my dad and Jim, Sr., ran the business throughout the 70s and 80s, and eventually they diversified. So that first diversification was mid-80s to kind of get into more fabrication work, still under the umbrella of the Sheet Metal Workers Union, but not just the HVAC side, more of the welding and metal forming at that point. So,
okay, and then tell us about your path. How did you get involved in the business, and how has your role evolved over the years?
So in the 90s, Jim Maynard Jr. had entered into the company more significantly, took on a leadership role, and was working with my dad and his dad. And then in the year 2000, I came back and joined the company. I'd been living out east, and moved back to the area. And the timing for me moving back was at another point of diversification where we had just purchased that minoxidant company, the air cleaning side of things. So we're looking for some help to build that and carve our space into that market, and that's coincided with me coming back to the area.
Got it. And then what does your role look like today?
So now, if you got fast forward 25 years, I'm an owner. Jim Maynard Jr. is still an owner, so we work together with our leadership team to try not to micromanage people, try to stay out of the way, but also correct here and there. We always have a list of 10 or 20 things that we're working on to try to benefit the company overall. Sometimes they're specific with certain divisions. Other times they're overlap across across the company. It could be software, it could be expense related with our fleet, with our tools, things of that nature that kind of cross over multiple divisions.
Now, the Crawford Company has had some phenomenal growth over the years, and it continues today. As we were talking before the show, you said for the last 3 years you've been in the top 10 in growth in your region, and a lot of that growth has come through diversification, as you talked about, getting into some of these other product, services, industries. So what's the approach of the Crawford Company when you are evaluating new opportunities for growth?
So most of the recent growth has come probably since 2020. So we purchased the Seaberg Industries at that point from a group, and then we also purchased an electrical contractor here in town, Artolite Electric. So Seaberg really expanded that manufacturing and production side of things. And then Artolite, it was the electrical company we bought, and they brought 20 electricians to us with a lot of good experience and a strong reputation in the market. But what that also did was it helped us kind of sync up the plumbing, HVAC, and electrical. So we have a MEP offering, and then we also have engineers, so we can do everything from the design to the pre-construction, to the project management, to the closeout on commercial, industrial, residential, service, all those spaces. So it kind of gave us a complete offering there. Seaberg's been great. We have a great leadership team there. Maynard and Mark Gray and Tim Pratt, Keith Kirks, all these guys really worked hard early on to get things going for Seaberg. It's one of our top performing divisions. And not only are they performing strong with deer and cat, but they probably have 20 to 25 other customers that they're doing supply work for, and we're real proud of them. So it's been good. We have good people. Troy Green, Mark Gray, Jim Jr. They're all in our leadership circle and have really put a lot of work in for us.
A lot of the businesses that I work with are always try to evaluate what is the next easiest or best opportunity for growth. And a lot of times they're trying to decide, is it to really focus on organic growth or look at strategic acquisitions? We hear tons out there today, right, about the retiring baby boom generation and all these companies that are coming up for sale. So how do you specifically evaluate opportunities? Like, what's your filter when you come and look at some of these opportunities?
So that's a great question and good point. So I think it's strategic growth that helps you organically grow. Okay, so it's both. So what can we do strategically that helps us organically grow? What do we have? What are we doing right now that we can do more of? And we can do more of it by strategically growing. So if we look at markets and market shares and opportunities, where is that? And what can help us? So an example would be, let's say we just talked about Seaberg Industries, they're doing really well. What can we do to organically grow them strategically? So we're currently working with a couple of their other customers, trying to figure out how we can take on more work. That'll require more space. So there's some conversations going on right now. What is the market potential? Do we have the resources to support this production work? And where are we going to do it? So that's just one example. On the contracting side, the Artolite Electric Group had a strong reputation in town. We wanted to merge that up with our contracting side. It made sense. So by bringing this strong group with 50 years of history into our mix, not only do we get a strong electrical team, but we organically grow that contracting side together. So those are a couple examples. I could probably rattle off 4 or 5 others. That's what happened recently in the last few years and has helped us to grow it. And just having really good people. Like, we've worked really hard at hiring good people that are a good fit to our culture, hardworking. They don't need a lot of oversight, and we've been very fortunate that way.
Yeah, so a couple things I want to make sure people don't miss there, right? One is it has to be a strategic fit with the business, with the things that you're already doing, right? It's not you're not gonna be probably buying a hamburger franchise, right? It's got to be a good fit with the things that you already do. And the second thing is something I think that's often overlooked, and that's the culture fit of a company that you're bringing in. I was recently listening to an interview with the venture capitalist, famous one, Mark Andreessen. And when they asked Andreessen, when the interviewer asked, why is it that you focus on startups and not acquisitions? And he said, well, because changing culture is hard, right? So what he loves is the opportunity to come in a new business. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. He said there's lots of people that are doing it well. And it's just, that's such an important part of the evaluation of an acquisition. So with all this growth, Ian, through acquisition, have you always gotten it right? Have going into a new market, are you batting 1,000 on this, or are there some that just didn't quite work out like the way you wanted it to?
No, I mean, there's been a few things that we've kind of tried to venture into that didn't pan out real well. For one, our monoxidant company's been great, and they've made money just about every year we've had them. Their margins are great. They're one of the top performing divisions for us. We did, a couple things in the early 2000s as far as trying to diversify their product mix within their group. So we did the fiberglass product. That's worked out great for us, still going strong. We expanded into oversized hose reels for military and construction. That's worked out great over the years. But one thing we did was we went into this market. So firehouses have exhaust systems, hoses that connect to tailpipes. And as the truck leaves the firehouse, there's a track, and the hose system travels with the vehicle, and it detaches at the bay door. The reason, a lot of times the living quarters are in that building or some office space off to the side, and they don't want the diesel fumes and particulate going into living quarters, kitchens, offices, so they capture those fumes. So we made a product that performed well and served that purpose, but we entered a market that was really oversaturated and had some strong players with some companies that were based in other countries even. So, they had thousands of installations, and here we were trying to carve into a niche where there was limited potential. And while we did sell some systems and we did have some solid installations, we just couldn't get our batting average up high enough, right? We weren't as competitive. So at that point, after a few years, we decided to discontinue that product and just focus on the other areas we were good at. So like I said, we had the fiberglass products that made sense, that was doing good for them. The oversized hose reels, it's doing good for them. So just having the ability to stop and refocus and look in another direction is helpful.
Yeah, you bet. And so many companies are hanging on to things that just don't make economic sense for the company. Or like you said, focusing on one product line that may not be tanking, but is preventing you from spending time and resources on other more highly profitable areas of the business. And in fact, in some cases, the fact that it's not terrible, it can kind of hang on, right? And we can invest way beyond what is warranted. So from this specific lesson, what were some things you took away, and how did that change your market evaluation process after that?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at markets and opportunities, doing the research on the current state of the market is super important. So, that's either, for us, it's either going to be kind of local, regional, or, national with Monoxvent, the craft brewing, and just identifying the players, clearly understanding what they're doing, what they're spending, how they're marketing, and what that landscape looks like. And then after you process and digest all that information, trying to decide, does it make sense? If it makes sense, how are we going to approach this? So, one that's worked out well, we go back to, the Seaberg Industries had, strong results, strong footprint in the market, but they had opportunities to do more. And we were able to identify that. And, Caterpillar and John Deere are big companies. And if you perform well and you rank well in their supply chain, you can do more work. So that was a focus. And then also concurrently, they've done a good job of identifying new opportunities with other companies. The electricians fit in well. And before that, we did that with the plumbing division too. Back in, I think, 2010-ish, we started the plumbing division and merged that up with HVAC. And now, Adam Isaacs and Brian Bonds, we've got some real strong leaders in there. And their highest years of revenue are occurring right now. And, their margins typically are pretty solid for us.
Great. A couple of times, Ian, you've mentioned the word culture. And culture can be a really broad statement, right? What it means to one person, it means to something to someone else. So because culture is an important part of the history at Crawford and what you're doing today, how do you guys think about culture, and what does a healthy culture look like across your company?
Well, Jim said this a number of times to Maynard, if you're not happy coming to work, that's tough. It's tough to get over that. You have to be enjoying what you're doing. So that's the first thing. And then it's up to us, to create an atmosphere or culture that people enjoy. So they need to be heard. They need to be able to take ownership. And then have a fair amount of flexibility to do their thing. So, we're fortunate we have leaders in all of our divisions that can just go ahead and move the ball down the field without needing us to, get into the weeds with them. Now, that said, if there's an issue, and they have to call timeout, we'll come in and intervene and support them. But yeah, we've done that, and we try to do fun things and let people know they're appreciated. Do a lot of strategic planning. Do a lot of things culturally, little things that don't cost a lot of money. Cookouts, nights at the baseball game, hockey game, things of that nature. We have teams in this corporate games that they have where businesses do golf and volleyball and dodgeball and track and all these different events. And I think it helps, and we try to have something for everybody.
Which one of those sports do you play, Ian?
Oh man, I do a lot of cycling. That's coming up on Sunday, so that'll be pretty easy for me. But I did do the track meet a couple weeks ago, and that was a little bit of a shock to the system. I hadn't run a 400 in 30 years, so I felt that for about a week.
For you, way to try something new.
Yeah.
I want to swing back on something you said, right? Because autonomy is a key human need, right? People want to be able to chart their own path. But as you also stated, right, sometimes we have to come in and correct leaders as well, because the research is clear on this. People don't leave companies, they leave managers, right? So we want to give our managers as much autonomy as possible, but we also have to make sure they're the ones that are spreading the culture, right? That determines what the culture of the company looks like. So how do you think about that balance in terms of, like you said, wanting to make sure it's a fun place to work, wanting to make sure that people are heard and all that, with giving autonomy to those leaders? How do you balance that?
So everybody's different, right? So there's a couple layers here. So we have 440 employees this week, right? So there's different ways to approach people. So it's not one size fits all. And, the way I might talk to one of the guys in the shop versus, one of the guys in the office, or, a different guy in the office, it's always crafted slightly differently, because it's important as a leader to understand what works with people and how you approach them. The one size fits all mentality is a mistake, in my opinion. And when I was in grad school, I got an MBA, and one of the guys talked about, MBWA, and I'm like, MBWA, what's that? He said management by walking around, and I'm like, oh, that seems silly, but I was, 24, 25 at the time. But he was right, like you go around and, hey, what are you working on today? How are things going? Do you need anything? Those kind of small touches. Um, they're they work for just about everybody, so I think that's important. And then if Jim or Troy or Mark or myself, if we're doing those things with our leaders in these divisions, I feel like that becomes part of the culture, and I see those guys doing a lot of that. We have a lot of meetings. We didn't used to have so many, but just about every division has a weekly meeting, and it might only be for 20 or 30 minutes, but they're looking at past, present, future. So they're looking at what worked well recently, what are we doing right now, where are we going in the future. And then we have leadership meetings of about 25 people every month. And, sometimes those agendas aren't real big, but we certainly fill up the hour every single time. And there's good takeaways, overall. And I think that feeds into our business planning then, once a year.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you said there. We call that only and exactly leadership, right? Only and exactly management. People, you have to know the people that you're working with in order to motivate them, manage them, hold them accountable in different ways. I always think of the first example for me, right, is my kids. I have one kid who, if I tell her, you know what, I don't think you can run through that wall, she'd be like, well, let me show you. And then I have another who, if I were to say that, she would think, well, if dad doesn't believe in me, then I'm not going to try, right? It's just that difference of working with different people. You can't, the best managers don't have, this is my leadership style, right? They adapt to the people that they work with. Has this focus on culture, Ian, has that always been present for you back, going back, like you said, 25 years, or maybe was there a big catalyst event or idea that brought this in? Trace that back for us.
I think we kind of fell into it a little bit, honestly. And what happened is, back in the day, with Minoxidant or with the plumbing division or getting into the craft brewing or even moving into the Dubuque market, these new things, as we grew, we needed help. And to get help and to get buy-in, people have to know they're appreciated and they're not micromanaged. So I think those things started just to happen organically. And then once we had a lot of moving parts and a lot of diversification, we started the business planning in 2011. And the first thing we did was come up with our core values for the company. And then that led into strategic planning. We would every year we've always come up with at least a one-pager that we can share with the whole company that shows, this is what we're working on this year. Those main points are shared throughout the company, and it's almost always communication is one of them, but culture, software, cost control, there's these kind of main headings, and then people understand this is what we're working on for the year. Beyond that executive summary, there's 20 pages of things that pertain to each division, and that has really been a good process for us and a good roadmap, and I think that's helped. So we kind of fell into it just by happenstance, and then we had the wherewithal to start the business planning, and I think that helped us a lot, and we continue it to this day.
Yeah, and you got some outside help on that business planning, right? When you go back to talk about 2011, was that new for you? What led you to seek some outside help in that area?
I just think we felt like we needed help, and I kind of ran into a guy named Dan Ebner. He's a professor at St. Ambrose University, and believe it or not, I was on the city council in Davenport for 4 years, and Dan was a facilitator, and sometimes he would come in to these community groups and try to there might be a big issue in the city, and he would get feedback from stakeholders and from the community and from elected officials and pull that together and help people navigate through processes. So I saw him do that with hundreds of people, and I'm like, man, if this guy can navigate through strategic planning for a children's zoo in West Davenport, he can certainly help our company. And we brought Dan in 2011. He had this side consulting business, and then we've used him ever since then. He's brought on a partner, Kevin James. Those guys have done really well. They're good at listening, and they're good at helping facilitate so everybody is heard, and that one or two people don't dominate meetings. We appreciate that, and in the end we get all our notes and everything put together, and it's a healthy exercise.
I talk to lots of business owners who are hesitant to pull the trigger on that, right? Like either it's the cost, or how would this person really know my business, or some other kind of hesitation. Based on your experience, what would you say to those businesses who might be a little hesitant in this area?
I mean, I think it's some of the best money we spend, honestly. You have to have the right facilitator, but Dan is the type of person that people feel comfortable with, so that's important. He listens, and sometimes people will open up more to a third party. And I mean, of course, they know we're going to read everything at the end of the day, but they may speak up more freely with him, and versus talking to myself or one of the division managers, or Jim or Troy. I think that works well for us, and we're not in the majority of those meetings. They're running those on their own. We might supply somebody to help with organizing notes and things like that, but our four leaders the company, we're not in those meetings, no.
Yeah, now with all this growth too, we'll swing back on culture, because sometimes we hear that growth is the enemy of culture. And what I like to say is growth can be the enemy of culture. If we're not intentional about maintaining the culture that we want, like you talked about, establishing corporate values that make it clear who we are and what we stand for, and if we're not thinking about how we do this. So how has that phenomenal growth that you've experienced over the last 4 or 5 years, how has that maybe pushed up against your culture, and how have you maintained a good culture through that, Ian?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're navigating through that right now. So I don't know, in the last 5 years, our employment numbers have doubled, and our revenues doubled as well. So that's a lot of growth, and it's you might think, oh, that's awesome. You got all this growth. You got this sales, and the margins are good, and we got all these good people. So I give ourselves a good score on that. That's awesome. But with that growth comes more people, more tools, more software, more expense, more vehicles. So now we're kind of at this crossroads that we got to get this right, and we will, but we need to get it right. So what do we need? We need more space for production, for people, for offices, and that kind of nature. And if we are able to do that, that'll feed into the culture. So people will feel comfortable in their workspace. Things will be more organized. They'll be more efficient. So that's what we need to solve right now, and we're working on it. And we've got a few ideas floating out there, and I think we'll solve it. But it's going to be in a few phases. And of course, just like the financial end of it, with the growth, we bought 2 companies. With that, we bought a lot of equipment. We bought a lot of vehicles. We bought a lot of tools. Our fleet has expanded. So all these things cost more, right? So we need to be cautious and strategic about what we do next, because we don't want to overextend ourselves, just like at home, right? If you do a big project at home, you got to really think hard about how you spend your money moving forward, right? So that's what we're doing right now, and we're gonna get it figured out. But yeah, space is the issue now. Now that we have all this extra work, we need to make sure we have room for it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the other things too that I find is that often the cap on growth is the ability to grow leaders, whether it's growing leaders up into taking a bigger role, right? Like you said, if the company is doubled in size, that sometimes takes a more evolved leadership skill set, or it's just growing more leaders to lead a growing number of teams. So how does Crawford Company approach that in terms of continuing to develop those leaders that are leading your growing divisions?
So I think if you have good leaders at the top of your divisions, and we have that, we've been very fortunate that will filter through to the rest of the company. And I'm not kidding when I say we have 100 leaders here, maybe more, and we're very fortunate that way, and we really appreciate these people. And that's the best thing we have going. That's our biggest asset, is our people, and we're very fortunate that way. They work hard, they stay focused. For the most part, they're always looking out for all the dollars they're spending. I feel like we have some strong pieces in place, but moving forward, we need to make sure we continue that we have that leadership group, the culture's strong, and that it's flowing through to everybody else. So if we've doubled our employment, we have 200 people here that have worked for less than 5 years at our company, right? So what do we do with those folks? How do we make sure they get that buy-in and they like it? I like to think people look to us as having a good culture here, but it's like anything. It could take 20 years to build that up, and it could take 2 or 3 years for it to go away. And we're not blind to that. We know that, so we're going to keep focusing in that area.
In the 4 disciplines of execution, they say to regularly ask yourself the question: if everything else at the company stayed exactly the same, what's the one change you could bring about that would make the biggest difference? So what is Crawford Company focused on right now? What's one big change that you're trying to drive in the?
Well, that's a good question. So one big change we're completing right now is our ERP software. So our software we moved to Acumatica, we moved out of Sage, and that was one really big change. So what that allows us to do is all the divisions can live in that space, and we can see everything in real time. It's cloud-based. So I could pull up a job right now and see the labor that we have on it so far this morning, the costs, all those sorts of things. So that's kind of a behind-the-scenes tool that we really needed with this growth. And then the other one's what we just talked about, is the space, right? We need space, and we do a lot of large construction jobs, a lot of large fabrication. Those materials take up space, and then we need to work in our spaces. So collectively we have a few 100,000 square feet. We have 5 buildings in Rock Island, 1 in Davenport, Muscatine, and Dubuque. But we need something a little bit more probably in Rock Island right now. So we're working with the city trying to figure that out.
Got it. Okay. Then as we kind of move towards wrapping up here, Ian, let's look ahead. Where do you see Crawford Company in the next 3 years, and even further into the future? What are the big things that you guys are chasing after?
Yeah, that's another good question. We're I think we want to preserve our market share on the contracting side, and we have some really strong relationships with general contractors in our area. So we want to preserve that and keep working with them. The more design build work we can do and have control of things at the early onset of projects, the better. Those usually turn out better margin-wise for us. So I think on the contracting side, that's definitely a focus. We've gotten into some other things too. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the custom architectural products. We've been in that for a couple of years, and exterior facades made with metal, and our team there has done a great job. We've been promoting that and packaging that with our MEP, and it's been great. And then on the manufacturing and fabrication side, I just think carving out more niches and more opportunities. We've got a fair amount of government work right now. Seaberg's got some customers that we're working with, and then our Minoxidant team has really done a good job with their fiberglass products. So they make fiberglass duct. So if you have a corrosive environment, you don't want metal duct, you want fiberglass duct. That could be an aquatic center where there's chlorine, water treatment plants, saltwater environments. So that duct product has really taken off, and they've seen 30% growth. I'd like to see more of that if possible, and I think we have the right leadership in place to do that as well.
Got it. Well, sounds like an exciting future. Now, let's go back the other way. So if you've been at this now for 25 years, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice 25 years ago, what would that be?
Yeah, I think probably starting the business planning and communication in the meeting piece a little earlier would have been helpful. I think in our company early on, we were hesitant to have too many meetings, and I think our mindset changed on that over the years, and I think that's helped. We're at the point now where most of our divisions meet every week, or a couple of them meet every 2 weeks. That just gets things out on the table, and you've got an audience. It sounds expensive. You got 10 people in a conference room for an hour. That's $1,000. But you can have $1,000 meeting and cut off a $20,000 misstep at the pass on a job site. That pays for itself. So that's what I would have done, is get that the meeting communication piece dialed in better. What's funny is we've been doing all this business planning and all these meetings, and we've gotten what I consider to be pretty good at it. And we do our business planning every year, and the facilitators want a top 5, and the communication is always in the top 5. So it's always something that can be better, even though I feel like we're doing a pretty good job on it. But that's always interesting to me. Yep.
Yeah, I've done or reviewed hundreds of employee surveys. And I don't think I've ever seen one where it said, well, communication's great, no change needed, we're fine, we know everything we need to know, right?
Yeah.
And what I find they don't primarily mean we want more communication. They want something that, like you were talking about earlier, that one pager of where we're going, right? They want to know what's important right now, where are we headed? And it's tough to do that without good productive meetings. I mean, it's like I've worked with so many businesses that they hate meetings, but what they find out they really hated was unproductive meetings. And to your point, a good meeting, even an expensive meeting, typically pays off more in alignment across the business and helps them avoid more costly mistakes. It can be a huge change in the business. So how do you, just along that line, I can't help but ask, how do you think about then running good meetings at Crawford Company?
Well, I try to keep it simple and I think a lot of our guys have gotten really, really good at this, but you can't have, certain people dominate the meetings, so you got to give everybody an opportunity to talk. You got to stay on point, right? You got to stay on the agenda. We can't deviate and go off on a 20-minute rant in a meeting. And then I think it's really important in every meeting to have past, present, future. What happened recently, where are we at, where are we going? And then next steps, what good's a meeting if you sit there and talk and then you come back the next week and you have the same items that haven't been solved. So, we have a microbrewery too. That's a different business, but we've installed that there, where every week we have these meetings with our kitchen and our brewer and our general manager, and it's helped because they're all really busy day to day. But we have these bullet points, and we send out a packet before and everybody reviews it, and you kind of feel like, oh my gosh, I got to talk about these things from a week ago that, I was responsible for. And it might just be, you know, ordering a new table, or, ordering new glassware, or, having an event plan, but it gives people accountability, and, it kind of works. So doing that in all the different divisions has helped.
Yeah, the most important part of the meeting is the last 5 minutes. What did we decide? Who's doing what? And by when? Right? Like, otherwise, we just had a nice time talking.
You're exactly right. Yep, I agree.
Well, Ian, this has been great. It's been fascinating to hear about your company and how it's doubled in size over the last 5 years, about how you really think strategically about growth, what markets you're going to go into, what you're going to exit, and where the biggest opportunities lie, and how you invest in leaders. So I just really appreciate the time to come share with other business leaders some important lessons today.
Good. Yeah. Thank you, Nathan. I've done a few of these interviews and along these lines, and you did a great job. And I really appreciate it. And again, we're very fortunate. We have really good people here, and that makes all the difference. And we feel very, very fortunate that way. Thank you.
So for people who would want to learn more about you or Crawford Company, where's the best place online to go?
So our main website, crawford-company.com, has an overview of our company, but it also has links to, we probably have like 8 different websites. And then, I've tried to stay dialed into LinkedIn, and I've got that page there. So always welcome to, talk to people, or, if they have ideas or things that we could help them with, certainly welcome that communication as well.
Well, that's great. We'll include those links in the show notes. Again, Ian, thanks. And listeners, if today's episode gave you something to think about, would you share it with another business owner who might benefit from what you've heard? And of course, be sure to subscribe on your favorite streaming platform so that you never miss an episode of Building Loved Businesses. Again, I'm Nathan Schock. Thanks for being here.